Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. It's Thursday evening on the Smart Connector group and live on various platforms. And I am here with a very, very special guest for you tonight, Hayley Paige. Welcome, Hayley.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. Now, Hayley is CEO of Notebook Publishing. And if you haven't heard of Notebook, it's an amazing publishing company. We'll be talking all about the power of books to promote your business and build your authority and your leadership and your brand, but also just the joy of writing. Because I personally love writing, and Hayley and myself were talking before the episode about writing and how powerful it is. So we're really going to get into it tonight. And Hayley, please, tell us a little bit more about you. I mean, how did you come to be the CEO of this amazing company and be a ghostwriter? Because you're not just the owner of your company. You also help other authors bring their work to market, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it's been kind of quite a whirlwind process and experience, really. So to kind of go back to the very beginning, I decided that I was going to open a publishing house when I was 6 years old. I was a complete book obsessive, and my uncle came this one Christmas with a stack of books, and one of them was a hardcover by Enid Blyton. And I was so in love with this book. It was the first hardcover that I'd owned. And I kind of promised myself that I was going to read every single word of this book. So, of course, I ended up coming across the copyright page, and I read through the publisher's details, which was Chancellor Press. And I don't know, I guess I had this epiphany or something as a 6-year-old and thought, this is what I want to do when I'm older. I want to create books. And then, kind of life happens and I became a mother, and I owned a couple of editing businesses. And to be perfectly honest, I had a near-death experience, and it kind of just shocked my system and woke me up a bit. And I realized that life's short and I really want to do what really resonates and what means something to me. So I launched my publishing house. I kind of identified a pain point that authors were having at that point and just kind of sought to solve it. And that's kind of how I ended up here. And, with the publishing, I quickly realized that was just one element, because so many authors struggle to even know where to start. So obviously then the book coaching came in and the ghostwriting. So that's it in a nutshell, really.
And do you write your own books, Hayley? Because
yeah, I do, but I mean, I just don't have enough time, to be honest, to be writing as many as I wish I could. But yeah, like you said before, I ghostwrite for kind of, high-level entrepreneurs who don't necessarily have the time or the desire to write their own books as well. But yeah, my books, they're definitely there as goals. I've written a couple, but there are some more that I really need to get written with a sense of urgency.
Yeah. So look, we were talking before the interview started about my passion for writing as well, because I just love writing. I love the power of books. Like you, I was always a massive bookworm. I mean, when I was really young, I used to have about 8 books on the go. And in fact, I still do, actually. They're just all sitting in my Kindle, so nobody really realizes. But, it is something so magical, isn't there, about books and just going into somebody else's world. And do you still do a lot of reading yourself, despite the fact that this is your business? Do you find that puts you off reading, or are you still a massive reader?
I don't think I could ever fall out of love with books in all senses. I think, what you've just said there about it being just so magical. I honestly feel like there are certain books that just kind of become ingrained in your soul. And as a child, especially, it's almost like, they just become a part of you, and you grow and you're just so influenced by the stories that you've read. And even, you know, as an adult now, I predominantly read nonfiction purely because, you know, I'm in the entrepreneurial sphere. But I do love fiction as well. But I find that even now, every book I read just leaves its mark on me. And I think, you know, if you kind of put the power of a book in business to one side and just think from a reader's standpoint, books, they do leave their mark on you. They are such an incredibly powerful way to impact people and shape people's lives. And yeah, I don't think I could ever fall out of love with that notion. It's just who I am.
Yeah, and I mean, books are very, very powerful as an authority piece for entrepreneurs, aren't they, Hayley? And you, as you said, you ghostwrite for a lot of entrepreneurs, and your publishing house publishes a lot of entrepreneurial books. So, what have you seen the impact has been for entrepreneurs whose books you've published?
It's crazy, really, because I think, you know, as soon as you publish a book, obviously you have different avenues to explore in terms of, you know, whether to go self-publishing or whether to go the hybrid route, which is what we do, or even to try and explore traditional publishing. But what I see is that when an entrepreneur professionally publishes and, you know, their book is, you know, of an impeccable standard where, you know, the cover's on point and the typesetting, so the interior layout is just beautiful. And when everything's done right, it's very reflective then of the services that the entrepreneur provides. So, you know, if you're offering a high-level coaching service, it kind of goes without saying that you want your book to be high level and to be absolutely perfect across the board as well, because rightly or wrongly, a reader picking up your book will kind of just align the two. They will think, you know, if a book is poorly presented or poorly published, they will similarly think that your coaching isn't of the best standard. So what I've seen is that it definitely up levels entrepreneurs when their book is professionally published and it's very well put together. And like when the lead generation is very subtly interwoven in, it can be incredibly powerful, because you've got then, you know, this book calling to your ideal clients. So your ideal clients are purchasing this book and therefore paying you a royalty. And then ultimately by the end of the book, they're thinking, Jane's amazing. I love everything that Jane said. Her services sound perfect. They sound fantastic. Where, you know, how else can I work with Jane? So they would kind of opt into your mailing list. They ask to go onto your mailing list. They ask to work with you. And it can just prove to be so incredibly lucrative. It's absolutely amazing. If you're offering, say, a $10,000 package, like a coaching package, you can easily have readers go through the course of your book and then think, I need that coaching package. And people just kind of self-qualify, book into your calendar and want to work with you. So it's just an incredibly powerful way of organically attracting in your ideal market and having them self-qualify and ask to work with you, which is, it's just mind-blowing when you think of that potential. Sorry, that's a very long answer to that question.
No, I mean, it is completely true. And I read quite a lot of business books as well as other types of books. So, you know, as I said, I'm a bookworm. So I think the interesting thing about business books as well is that it's not just about the information, is it? It's, you know, you do enter that person's mind, you know, you enter their world and you enter their world of wisdom and their perspective and their unique values. And all of those things are conveyed in the tone of the language that they use and the way that they present their ideas. So it's a very rich experience, isn't it? I think if you're into reading and you're into books, because you get a really powerful feeling of the person themselves, don't you? And that's
Absolutely.
why it's kind of like a shortcut to connection, isn't it?
It really is. This is another thing that I say so often. If you imagine selling 1,000 copies of your book, it really blows my mind to think that 1,000 people are building a relationship with you, and you're kind of none the wiser. You're completely oblivious to this, but they're getting to know, like, and trust you, which is obviously absolutely fundamental in business. But they're they're genuinely connecting to you. And by the time they, you know, decide to get on a discovery call or actually work with you, they feel very deeply connected to the author, to whomever has written this book. It's really quite incredible to me that it's creating and nurturing relationships while, you know, you're going off and living your life and building your business. It is, yeah, it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Before we move on, Hayley, we've got a couple of comments here. So Justin is asking whether you speed read, Hayley.
I don't actually. I read every single word very meticulously. I don't know, I feel like it kind of robs me of the experience if I was to even attempt it. I just, no, and to be honest, I don't even know if I could do and still absorb that whole experience in the same way. I think it's almost like watching a film on double speed. I'm sure that you would grasp, you know, the concepts and all of the key moments, but what about those intentionally long pauses that are incorporated in, that are there for impact? So yeah, no, the answer to that would be no, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I would much rather kind of immerse myself in my clients' books and just, yeah, make sure that I kind of get everything out of it that I'm supposed to.
I mean, what about Audible, Hayley? Because a lot of people listen to books, don't they? And I know that I do. I mean, I really love listening to books as well as reading them. But I do often, I must admit, listen on, 1.25 speed, because I tend to find that, I don't know, it just works better for me. So do you listen to books on Audible as well? And if so, do you listen to them? Do you speed up?
I actually don't. I'm probably the worst person to ask about that because I'm just, as you can probably see, and let me just say, this is a fraction of the books I own. I have thousands of books. I'm a physical book person. So although we facilitate publication in, you know, paperback and, you know, on Kindle and general ebook format, and, you know, Audible is something that we're exploring as well at the moment. But for me, just nothing compares to just holding the physical book. So I totally get, I'm probably in the minority of people that don't use Kindle and don't use Audible, but yeah, for me it's just the love of physically holding a book, and just, again, it's about that immersing myself in the real experience of reading. So
yeah, and I get that. In fact, my daughter's the same. So I bought her. I love my Kindle, you know, I really do, because it's just light and you can have all of these books at your disposal. And quite often I'll jump them out depending on my mood, because I've always done that my whole life. So I will jump from, I think, do you know what, I don't want to read about this anymore. I'll just go here and go there, and you can just like go back to the content section, and you don't have to pick up lots of books. So that's why I love my Kindle. But I bought my daughter a Kindle, and I don't actually think she's ever used it, because she said, you know, I just love that thing of holding a book and turning the pages. And it's just that kind of, it's almost like it's a physical present, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah,
because you've got shiny cover and the pages and the tactile sensation. For some people, that I know that is very special, because, as I said, I think that my daughter is one of those people. It's just, we all consume content differently, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I totally get that. Yeah, some people just absolutely love Audible and some people love Kindle. And I have tried it, and I really wish I could get on board with it, because, you know, I've gone on holiday before and packed like 10 thick paperbacks in a suitcase because I can't decide, and it just would be so much more convenient if I just had a Kindle. But I just can't. I've tried so hard to fall in love with it, but I can't. Like you said, for me, I think it's this whole experience, especially now that I don't have that much time to read just for pleasure. So I really just love the experience of kind of scribbling myself away in we have a reading nook that is just absolutely full of books, and it's just, you know, all soft textiles and soft furnishings. And I just love, it wouldn't feel right to sit in a big cozy armchair for me and just have an electronic device. So for me, it is definitely just the whole experience of candles and cushions and big sofas and a physical book. But You know, maybe one day when I can't physically, you know, house any more books, maybe then.
Yeah. Oh, so let's go on to talk about genres, Hayley. So I know that you specialize in, well, there are two types of books that you specialize in your publishing house, really. Would you like to tell our viewers and listeners what they are? I think it's two types, isn't it, mainly?
I wouldn't say just two types. I mean, we do publish fiction and nonfiction, and predominantly our focus is on nonfiction.
Yeah.
Written as a lead generating book for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But to be honest, when we very first launched, we were solely fiction based, because of the pain points I'd experienced as a writer. You know, I'd self-published my first book when I was 21, which, you know, it's like 17 years ago now. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I self-published on Lulu Press, and it was just the biggest book flop that there has probably ever been, because
I'm sure
you know, I designed my it probably was, honestly. It was like, you know, selling 5 copies to your neighbors and your mum's friend and things like that. But I just didn't know what I was doing. It was a case of designing my own cover and kind of throwing it up and just hoping for the best, and you know, it was littered with errors and all of those kind of things. So when I came to launch Notebook Publishing, it was very much focused on offering the advantages of self-publishing. So, you know, complete rights to your work, 100% royalties, but then the standards of professional publication. So, you know, the cover design and the editing and everything else that goes with that. So when I did launch Notebook Publishing, it was very much focused on helping fiction writers to, you know, make their dreams a reality, really. But just as we've evolved, we have like our main publishing house, Notebook Publishing, and then we have different imprints, which essentially are publishing houses within the publishing house. So we have Emmy Press, which deals with like children's fiction and young adults. And then we have Black Cherry, which is, you know, more adult, risque kind of material. But Onyx Publishing. Erotic fiction, yes. So adult stories there. But Onyx Publishing it's definitely kind of like our laser focus imprint. And that's definitely where we get the most publications, because, you know, it's kind of very organically happened, where the majority of our clients have been based in the US, and they're just high-level entrepreneurs wanting to write a lead generating book. So we predominantly publish lead generating nonfiction. So they're kind of like the main genres.
And I mean, I've heard, you know, and this is certainly something that is on the radar for me, that a book is an amazing lead magnet as well, and can almost, if you combine it with Facebook ads and funnels and so on, that you can actually you know, generate revenue from it that can then pay for your Facebook ads. And I know that is a strategy that some people teach. And I'm just wondering whether any of your authors actually do that.
Absolutely. And it isn't even just a case of, you know, it paying for your Facebook ads. We had, just as an example, we had a client publish at the beginning of December, and the very next week she made $24,000 in sales just through her book. And that was people coming through her book and buying into her service. So I mean, the power of a book from a financial standpoint is just absolutely mind-blowing, because essentially, if you can even give your book away for free, if you're giving it to people who are your ideal clients, it's mind-blowingly lucrative, because because like I said, they kind of end up self-qualifying. They go through it, and they, you know, they know the price points of your services, and they want to work with you. So the financial reward can just be absolutely through the roof. It's crazy. But yeah, even if you were doing like a free plus shipping type funnel, essentially you're giving your book away for free at that point. But again, it's like free advertising and free marketing at that point. So again, just incredibly lucrative.
Yeah, I was actually interviewing an SEO expert. The podcast hasn't been released as we speak yet. this week, and his name is David Burton, and he has a quite a big SEO agency in the US. And he wrote a book, and I was talking to him about it, and he said that it took him 2 years to write because he really, really wanted it to be a good book and very valuable. In fact, I've got it here, but he gives it away, and he offers it either in print or digital form to anybody for free. And he has grown his agency off the back of that. He doesn't do any other lead generation. I mean, obviously they do SEO, but he doesn't do any cold sales, any kind of outreach. He doesn't put out any offers. All he does is he actually offers his book, and he offers, obviously he's an SEO expert, so his book is about SEO because it's a very specialist niche field that you know, it's he doesn't do anything else. So he managed to grow his agency significantly just on the back of that book. So it just goes to show that exactly what you say. That the book in itself, you know, it can transform a business.
It honestly can. And what I really love to say to people is, let's imagine, excuse me, let's imagine that you have a room full of your ideal clients. So, you know, anybody who might be interested in your services, whether they're, you know, lower ticket or high ticket, if you have a room full of your ideal clients and they were giving you their undivided attention for, say, for 4 hours, because, you know, on average, it might take you about 4 hours to read a book. If they were giving you that undivided attention and listening to every single word you said, surely off the back of that, you would generate crazy amounts of interest in your business and, you know, in your services. And that is essentially what you're doing. You're giving somebody your like 4 hours worth of your words, and they are choosing to immerse themselves in everything that you've got to say for the entire duration of, you know, going cover to cover. It's absolutely, again, I just think that's something that people tend not to think about, but they're sitting there and giving you their sole focus, dedication, and time. They're like absorbing every single thing that you choose to say to them. It's just that it's not being articulated. Well, I was going to say orally, but if you've got an Audible, then it is. But ultimately, if you're reading somebody's book for 4 hours, it's just, yeah, it's absolutely crazy the kind of attention then that you're going to generate.
I think the other thing that's quite interesting with the advent of Audible and Kindle and so on is that e-readers and as well as physical books, is that people can consume books in different ways. And I certainly know that if I really like a book, I will order it in different formats. So I will actually, I'm just one of those crazy book people. So I will buy it on Audible. I'll order it on Kindle. But then if I really like it, I will buy the print version. And this is like a bit of a business book, because I'll use the print version as a reference book. So I'll think, do you know what? That idea was really good. And I'll kind of highlight it and I'll turn down the corners.
Oh. Yeah, oh no!
I'll do all of that. I'm afraid so. I know it's awful, isn't it? But
you actually highlight the text.
I will highlight.
Oh, my poor heart. It's so funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I mean, everybody obviously they do it differently, but only if it's a business book. I mean, I wouldn't do it to a, you know, work of fiction or. I mean, I've got plenty of, you know, lovely books that sit, you know, they sit there on the shelf and they're kind of quite precious. But you know, if I'm reading a book and I think this is full of actually really interesting information that's very relevant to my business, then I will get it. I will get it in different formats because I want to absorb the thinking.
Yeah.
And
I do that with hardcover particularly. I tend to get like the paperback and then I'll go hardcover. But I was just looking and let me show you what I do, because I highlighted a book once, and honestly, it breaks my heart that I think that I did this, but probably not the best example. This is real life organizing, but I literally I put these sticky tabs in with every time I come across something that I think is like valuable that I need to come back to, I put these sticky tabs in. And I have some non-fiction books that are literally it would have made more sense to tab the bits that are irrelevant because there are just that many throughout. But yeah, I used to turn the corners over as well when I was a child, and I've gone back through my books from when I was a kid, and I'm just like, oh, I can't believe that I used to turn the corner down. So but yeah, I guess this is publisher behavior now.
Yeah, I know. It's not really a good thing to do, turning the corners down. It's generally kind of discouraged, isn't it? It's one of those. I remember, my children used to bring books back from the library at school, and their teachers used to really tell them off if they turned down any of the corners. So it's like, you are not supposed to do that because you're spoiling the experience for anybody else. And yeah,
it's funny, but what I find, this is just in total contrast to what I've said, I love though getting secondhand books and seeing where other people have annotated, certain paragraphs, or I just think it's so beautiful to kind of get the insight into somebody else's reading journey. And I guess, like, when the time comes that I'm no longer here, I don't know, it would be amazing if my children could go through my books and see my handwriting, but I personally can't bring myself to do it. But I definitely think there's something also really quite special about doing that, just penciling in your thoughts and your musings as you're going through a book. But yeah, it was just that initial instinctive response there of highlighting, like, oh my God, poor books.
So I have to ask you, as one kind of fellow bookworm to another, what is your favorite book of all time?
Oh my gosh,
or
that's so hard.
Yeah, what was the book that really had the most profound impact on you, perhaps a formative impact?
Do you know, I think there was a fiction that I read when I think I was probably 11, and my English teacher suggested that I read it, and it was called Learning to Swim by Claire Chambers, and it's a coming of age book. And I honestly just still absolutely love that book so much. And yeah, these days when it comes to fiction, I read a lot of like crime thriller. I love Harlan Coben. He's my absolute favorite author. But I also love Naomi Novik as well. And she does fantasy. She did Spinning Silver was beautiful. And what was her other one? I'm clearly not the best fan at this point. I can't think of her debut work, but she writes so beautifully. Her descriptive writing is just absolutely amazing. But I do think Learning to Swim has just been, it stayed with me for some reason. Just that lovely coming of age story with all the trials and tribulations of becoming a teenager and becoming a woman. And it's just, yeah, I just absolutely love that. So
yeah, there are just so many books that I can think of as well, that had such a profound influence on me. But I think one of the first ones was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, because it's just such a wild book. It's so kind of like, I don't know, just so wild and crazy. And, this whole story of kind of Heathcliff and the passion in it, that was just incredible, just the passion and the energy and that kind of, that teenager, who was, she was living centuries ago, but you could feel it, you could feel it as if she was right there. So, it's just great. So Hayley, it's kind of interesting that you've got this kind of erotic fiction side. I know that everybody's probably kind of curious about that because of course, everybody loves to talk about this, but how did you decide that you were going to bring that into the fold? Did you just recognize that there was a need for it in the market, that there was a niche that or did authors come to you and say, look, I've got these great ideas for all these like really saucy books and
yeah, basically that was it. Basically, I mean, you can't lie that like you said, everybody's interested in, sex and sex sells, but ultimately it wasn't something that I'd ever really thought of, because this came very early on in my publishing journey. But yeah, it was something that was requested where Authors liked the standard of publication and the distribution and everything, but they were kind of fed up with the self-publishing route and how I guess the standards just weren't there, and I guess the books looked a little seedier than they should have done. So yeah, there was the demand there. So ultimately, I didn't want to assign the same shelf space to erotic fiction as I would to, a general non-fiction, for example, or to somebody's fiction. I wanted to make it very separate so that authors felt comfortable, regardless, of opinions or views. I didn't necessarily just want to kind of clump erotic fiction in with, a coming of age, for example. So yeah, very quickly I just recognized then that we needed a separate imprint, just like we did do with children's fiction and entrepreneurial nonfiction. So yeah, Black Cherry Publications was kind of born from that need. But like I say, I mean, yeah, there is definitely a demand for it. Just across pretty much every industry, there's some kind of darker, more risque element to it. And the demand was there. But I think, yeah, for us, our focus is definitely on, the entrepreneurial side, just because that's where the demand has been. And we can see that, yeah, it's just so lucrative for the authors, because ultimately whatever they invest in publishing with us, it just comes back, not even tenfold. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So, and like you said as well, it's that authority piece. So
yeah. So if I mean, there are lots of entrepreneurs listening into the podcast, so it is a podcast for entrepreneurs. So I already know, because I've just seen some comments on, from Andy. It says, inspired me to seriously think about writing about my specialist skill. Do you think it's better to give it away as a lead generator or try and sell it, or both? First of all, I guess we should answer that question. So what's your opinion on that, Hayley? Do you think it's better to sell or better to give away?
I would definitely, especially initially, I would sell, because you manage to drum up so much interest just by telling people that you're writing this book, and by giving teasing information. What I say to my clients is, we go through this process of blueprinting the book. So, they know that they want to write a book, but they don't necessarily know where to start or exactly what it should include. So we blueprint the book. And when you've got it blueprinted, which essentially just means you've got the backbone there and you know what it's going to include, we tell our clients to just start marketing from that point. So start telling people, for one, it holds you accountable that you're definitely going to get this done, but it just really drums up a lot of interest, because you could be addressing one particular point in your book that so many people are interested in and need to know about. So just by constantly talking about, what your book's going to include, just builds up this amazing hype to the point that when your book goes to pre-order, the sales just absolutely go through the roof. So I would definitely say there are times and opportunities for making the book available for free. And, that can just grow your list by thousands of people. But ultimately, you definitely need to, I would say, prioritize selling, for the first 8 to 12 weeks, because that's always going to be when your sales are at a peak. So, and similarly as well, if you were to do a podcast or any kind of interview, make sure that you're selling the book at that point, because again, it's just that opportunity to kind of drum up amazing revenue at that point. And ultimately, your ideal clients, if you're selling, for example, a 10K package, your ideal clients aren't going to hesitate about, paying $20 for a book that could help them through a pain point. So again, it just pays to keep that price point of the book quite high during those times. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful, Hayley. And I certainly know when I talk to my mentees, people they're very, very keen. If I mention a book that I've read, they scribble it down and they go and buy it. And then like a week later, they say, I'm reading that book. And And you know, so the appetite, I think, amongst the entrepreneurial community for any new sources of kind of wisdom, and also particularly mindset, you know, that's a really, really popular genre, I think amongst entrepreneurs, because we all need, you know, the whole entrepreneurial journey is a bit of a roller coaster, isn't it? You know, there are ups and downs, and everybody knows that. So what we have to do is we have to detach from our results, because if you're not able to do that, then you're going to feel awful one day and on top of the world the next. So that whole kind of like the mindset thing is really massive. So yeah, we're a great, as well as it being good for our businesses, you know, we entrepreneurs, we're great consumers as well. Definitely.
Absolutely. And what I would say as well, when that entrepreneurial journey kind of, you know, on the bad days, like you said, we have the highs and lows and the peaks and troughs. And what you have to remember is this book is a marketing platform. It's a marketing tool, which similarly means it's tax deductible as well. It's a business expense, which is great. But ultimately, it's a marketing tool that organically sits there working for you, because if it's been written in the right way, and if you've got, you know, industry relevant keywords in your title and in your subtitle, your ideal clients are going to very organically find your book. So on those days when you're not out there marketing because it's a tough day or whatever's going on, your book is still attracting in those ideal clients and nurturing them. So again, it's just, I could say it over and over, it's just so powerful. It blows my mind every time I talk about it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I do think it's very, very important to have those authority pieces or those assets, you know, whether this podcast, you know, this is something that you put out there. It's obviously different medium to a book, but I think it is never really enough. I mean, at the moment, every sector is saturated. And of course, something like a book, it helps you differentiate yourself and stand out for your value and give you some thought leadership, doesn't it? Which is
absolutely. Absolutely. But you just need, I can't stress this enough, you just need to make sure that the standards are there. Because as you said, it's like every entrepreneur right now is writing a book. And what will really set you aside with everybody doing that is to do it well, because very few entrepreneurs are doing it well. Because again, I mean, it's nobody's fault if you don't understand the writing and publishing industry. When somebody says to you, just self-publish, it's free, then of course that's the option you go with, because you don't understand the difference.
Yeah.
But when you've got, you know, thousands of entrepreneurs self-publishing, and it's of a particular caliber, you can definitely set yourself aside by making sure your book is just of an exceptional standard. Because ultimately, if you've got two parenting coaches, for example, and one has self-published and one is professionally published, you can tell the difference. Like, I know a self-published book a mile off, and your clients will as well, just at a very subconscious level. So like I said at the beginning, you want to be sure that, you know, the standards are there, because ultimately people will assume that, you know, the standards of publication are aligned with the services you provide. So yeah. It's just important to set yourself aside then in this saturated market by, making sure that your book is just the very best version of itself that it can be. And ultimately, you can never claw it back either. You could take it off sale, but the books that have been sold or ordered in by retailers will be forever circulating. And, you know, that's mortifying to me, knowing that, you know, my first book flopped and it was absolutely horrific. And there are copies out there that I cannot burn. But ultimately, you want to make sure it's the very best version of itself, so that you don't want to burn them.
Yeah, I mean, I published a book, you know, as you know, Hayley. So my book, The Smart Connector, it took me probably about 3 months, I would say, to actually get it out there. And and you know, I went through the whole process. I did actually work with a consultant, and I kind of did a bit of a hybrid thing, because he told me what to do, so it wasn't a complete done for you service. But, you know, I went through the whole thing of kind of the keyword research and, you know, getting the editor and getting like you know, just a typesetter and getting a proper, professional cover design. And it was a really big deal, having to do all of that myself. And then when I kind of announced that it was published, there was, in my entrepreneurial communities, there were a lot of people that said, oh yeah, I've published like 7 or 8 books or something. And it's like, what? I've never seen your book or whatever. And really it is, as you said, very easy just to write something and chuck it up on Kindle, which would cost you like, next to nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
And it's there, but it is a completely different beast, isn't it?
Yeah, there's just no doubt about it whatsoever. And like I said, it's nobody's fault, because you just kind of think, well, publishing is publishing. But ultimately, when you've traveled both roads, you can absolutely see and feel the difference. And your readers can as well, because, of course, the odd error slips the net, and we've all read professionally published books and there's a couple of typos in them. But ultimately, self-publishing is just, like you said, it's an entirely different beast, because to self-publish, what we say to people is you can definitely self-publish to a high standard. However, you either need to be willing to pay like extortionate amounts to hire experts in every individual field. So like you said, cover design, editing, proofreading, typesetting, everything. Or you need to invest ridiculous amounts of hours in learning to be an expert in each of those areas. And if that was possible, feasibly possible, publishing houses just wouldn't exist, because even here we have a large team, and our team, they're amazing people in their own area of expertise. And it's not easy to just design a cover that resonates with your audience, with your ideal market, that echoes the mission and the voice that you're trying to articulate. If it was as simple as a stock image and random typeface and all of that, then go for it. But it's so much, the whole process is just so much more sophisticated than that. And like you said, it is a huge laborious task. I mean, we had one client recently who was considering hybrid versus self-publishing, and everyone was telling her to self-publish, and she's gone down that road, and she keeps messaging me now just like overwhelmed, like, I don't know what I'm doing, this isn't working, this is stressful. And it's kind of heartbreaking to watch, because I can see exactly how that's going. And it's just it is heartbreaking, because it's difficult, but ultimately I think once you've self-published, that's when you learn the difference then. Well, I mean, actually what happened with me, as I said, is that I work with a book consultant. He's a lovely guy and really, really knowledgeable. But I think his idea was that he was going to teach me how to do all these things. And in the end, I just I can't do all of this stuff. I can't go on Fiverr and, sort of filter out all of these editors and choose which one's the best. I just gave up. I said, look, you're going to have to do it for me, because I just can't do it. It's too complicated. I don't know. How can I tell which editor is a good editor? How can I tell which, proofreader or copywriter or book designer? I can't do any of this myself. I just don't know. So I would never go back and do it that way again, even though in the end, he did give me expert guidance, and he was a great guy, and I love working with him. And, he did also put me in touch with, he basically took over in the end. But I would not do it that way again. If I would, the only way that I would do it again, and I learned through that experience, is I would engage a publishing house, whether the publishing house came to me or whether I actually, paid them. That would be the only way that I would launch another book, because I've learned through experience that it's an expert business, and like any expert business, it's best to engage the experts and let them do what they do best. So that's my message as a publisher. Absolutely. No, I absolutely love that. And it's just so true. It's, we all hire experts every single day. We wouldn't decide that, we want to build a house and then decide to build it ourselves, or in the vast majority of cases, we wouldn't. We want to hire somebody and make sure it's done properly. And we all have our own area of expertise. And I think it's just about recognizing not necessarily where our weaknesses are, but where our area of expertise is, and just focusing on that and kind of outsourcing the rest. So it's just about acknowledging that. And yeah, or alternatively, like I said, investing a lot of time into learning how to do it properly, which,
Yeah.
like I said, if it was as easy as that, we wouldn't have experts in cover design and experts in editing and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely just a lot more involved than Amazon's 3-step process, for example.
Yeah, and I think really it applies to every aspect of marketing. You know, there are really no shortcuts. There's no get rich quick, you know, cheat sheets, because you know, really there are only 3 ways that you can go about it. Is you can do it badly and cheaply, or you can do it you know, to a decent standard but tie up a huge amount of your time learning the process, or you can, you know, instead of, I mean, you know, your time is worth something, and as an entrepreneur, you know, you have to think about the cost of your time. Or, you know, as I said, the other route is really to engage an expert. So it's either time or money, or do it badly and
absolutely. Yeah, we say this with ghostwriting as well.
Depressing to everybody, but you know, it really. I think the message, Hayley, is that the power of books, they make it worth the investment, don't they? At the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's going to sit there continuously attracting in your ideal clients, but also being that authority piece and that trust stamp, because yeah, it's essentially you are showcasing your expertise and how you help your clients, and you're taking your reader on a transformational journey as well. If you can identify with your reader at the very beginning and then lead them through a journey whereby at the end of the book you've managed to solve just even a small pain point and therefore positioned yourself as an expert, again, the power is just incredible there, because they get to the end of the book and think, oh my gosh, like I've experienced such and such a transformation going through this book, whether that's, you know, being able to help your baby sleep better, or, you know, learning a new marketing technique, whatever it is that you're learning about, you end up going through this transformation as a reader. So as an author, if you can lead your reader through that experience, then again, it's just, yeah, the power is just manyfold. There are so many different layers to how powerful it is. And kind of going back to what you said there about the time as well, like how your time is worth something. We say this when it comes to ghostwriting, because some, you know, very high level entrepreneurs that decide to outsource the ghostwriting, we say, you know, typically you need around 160 to 200 hours to write your book properly. So to blueprint it, write it, and publish it properly. So you kind of have to figure out then whether those 200 hours are better spent working on your business and attracting in your ideal clients. So essentially, you know, staying focused on your area of expertise, or whether it's more lucrative for you to actually invest the 200 hours into writing it. And if you can earn more than the ghostwriting in that situation, then it makes sense to outsource the ghostwriting, especially if you're not a born writer. You know, if it's something that you struggle with, it's just, again, a no-brainer. So, but yeah, books are just ridiculously powerful in business.
Yeah. So do you do the ghostwriting yourself, Hayley, or do you get other people to do it for you? Is it your thing, the ghostwriting?
Yeah, so at the present moment, anybody that engages ghostwriting engages me to do that. So we go through like a very in-depth process there, but that is certainly not something that's sustainable or scalable going forward. So hopefully by the end of this year or next year, we'll have a few ghostwriters, I think, but my standards are incredibly high. So I think it's going to be a process of, yeah, interviewing and finding the right kind of people. And that's like, I'm not tooting my own horn there or anything in that regard. It's just that I just want to make sure our clients are served as well as they can be. But yeah, at this point, I work personally with people to do the ghostwriting. But yeah, going forward, hopefully the team will grow in that regard.
Yeah. So has there been like a favorite book of yours that you've ghostwritten? I mean, I know I'm sure that you've enjoyed them all, but is there one that you particularly like to draw attention to, or you're not really allowed to talk about it because it's
No, we have to sign a confidentiality agreement,
right.
because yeah, our clients get the complete rights to their book, so they are permitted then to say that they are the author of the work, so they retain all rights.
Yeah.
I wish I could say more, because there's something that I'm itching to say, but I'm just under contract. So I can't. But what I will say is there is one that I'm working on at present, and yeah, I'm just like blown away by this lady's journey. So it's such a privilege really to be able to be chosen to articulate somebody's journey. Is just absolutely incredible. And
Yeah.
although this book that I'm writing at the moment does still lead people into her business, it's not about her business, it's about how she's got there, and just this incredible journey that she's been on. I'm in complete awe of her. And yeah, I know this is all very ominous, but yeah, I just love the process, and it is such a privilege to be able to write somebody else's story. Is just something else, really.
Yeah. So we've got another question. Is there a basic format for a business focused book? So would you say that it follows the A B C X Y Z type do this, do that, or is there more opportunity for people to be creative and just do it their way?
I would say that you can absolutely be creative in terms of the order of things and the flow of things, but what you really want to just be mindful of is that this book isn't about you, and it's about your reader. So get super clear on what we call this transformational reader's journey. So like I just said earlier, you kind of want to identify where the reader is when they pick up this book, and where you want them to be by the time they've reached the end, and what you need to kind of impart and teach them, and what you need to share in order to take them from A to Z. So you might decide to mix it up and not necessarily tell your story in a linear fashion, but ultimately just keep at the forefront of your mind always that you need to take them on this journey, and make sure that by the time they get to the end, they've learned something, or you've solved a pain point. And that can mean just moving them slightly away from the pain point they're experiencing and closer to the pleasure end of the spectrum, but just take them on that journey. I think if you keep that as the very backbone of the book, that's kind of like the only rigid aspect of it, I would say, because that's just absolutely pivotal. You want the reader to get to the end and your books to have left a mark on them in some way, and for your name to just be the go-to name. Like if somebody says, I need help from a parenting coach, if you've just read a book on parenting, that that person's name just springs to mind because they've left that mark on you. So I hope that answers the question anyway.
Yeah. But I think that's great, and really it's the same for any form of marketing. I have a program, for example, and it's exactly the same thing, because I take entrepreneurs from their harder hustle loop to the path of powerful expansion. It's a journey, isn't it? So I suppose just exactly that transformation is why people will engage with you, isn't it? Because they have pain, and they have a problem that they need solving. And the thing about books, and I think about that journey, is it taps into our very kind of primeval connection with stories, doesn't it? That we all like to kind of, in a way, have those fairy tale endings, don't we? So yeah, I totally get it. I'm just loving this conversation. It's been so great.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So if people wanted to engage with you, if they wanted to help you, get your help in terms of getting their book published, what would be the process, Hayley?
Well, initially we would just have a conversation really about kind of their book related goals, if they have a business, where they're at in their business, what kind of programs they offer, even down to like the pricing of those programs, because that just helps us to establish kind of how to frame the book going forward and how many, leads we need to bring in order to convert them and things like that. So a call initially is always the first point. And then, if we decided to work together, it purely depends where they're at and where they feel their abilities lie. So a lot of people really struggle with even getting started. Like they know they want to write a book, but they don't know where to start. So in that case, we have a program that takes them all the way through from blank page to publish ready book. And that's for a lead generating nonfiction. And it's a really, really powerful, amazing program, especially when you've struggled. Like I've worked with somebody who was trying to write her book for 30 years. And it's just amazing to me. It blew my mind. And she went through our blueprinting program and her book is like finished, ready for publication. And it's just amazing to know that it solved a pain point that's been plaguing her for 30 years. It's just absolutely amazing. But yeah, then similarly, we have clients come to us whose manuscripts are already written. So at that point, we assign their own cover designer, their own editor, and we thoroughly go through the book and restructure it if needed. We incorporate all of that very subtle lead generation to, pique the reader's interest and get them wanting to, move that relationship off the page, so to speak, and into like a very real world setting. And yeah, when we go through publication, we make the book available like globally. So like Waterstones here in the UK, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters Indigo, Walmart and Target, even like all of the key players in the industry. And then we do our bestseller marketing as well. So many questions popping through.
Oh, they are. Yeah, I know.
But yeah, essentially, I would say people can always reach out to me or to our team and we can have, a conversation about where they're at and what their goals are. And we can go from there. But it's a super lovely experience and it's very collaborative, like what we mentioned with the cover design aspect. So, I think most clients have a very clear vision about the kind of cover they want, but ultimately sometimes that just doesn't properly gel with their ideal market or like the overall tone of their book. So it's very collaborative. We go back with, our professional advice and our expertise and kind of guide our clients and say, for your market, this would probably work better. But ultimately our clients get the final say because we want them to have the benefit of creative control, but we want to give them that professional guidance as well. So yeah, it's just a really lovely experience of them working like with our team to get their book dream fulfilled, but to do so in a way where, the book is just the very best version of itself, as I mentioned. So
sounds great. So just before we go, so Richard has a question about does she have some ghostwriters to help people who they know what they want to say, but they're not great at grammar or perhaps punctuation? A lot of people are not very good at grammar and punctuation. And isn't that where the copy editors come in?
Absolutely. Hayley? Yeah. So that's the copy editor's role. I mean, a lot of people struggle with grammar and punctuation. It's not, you're kind of not in the minority at all, Richard. So yeah, what I would say is that definitely falls to like our editorial team. We go through doing several rounds of edits just to make sure that everything is, like I said, the very best version of itself. So yeah, grammar, punctuation, and just the overall structure and like readability and the flow of everything, that's the copy editor's role. And that's super important because, at the end of the day, it's very, very rare that we will get a manuscript that's super polished and perfect and error-free. Like every manuscript needs work and it needs fresh eyes because, as a writer, we end up going back over our manuscripts and kind of reading what we think is there rather than what is actually there. So Everybody needs an editor. J.K. Rowling needs an editor. Like the best writers in the world, Stephen King, need editors. So grammar and punctuation and everything that the editor does is, yeah, it's the same across the board. And Richard, with being autistic again, you know, we've had a number of clients who struggle in the same arena. And absolutely, it's just something that a proficient editor is able to navigate and just make your book, you know, an incredible version of itself without anybody ever being able to pick up on any kind of struggles that the author has. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the message is that a really good editor can improve the quality of the book and just elevate it above wherever it was to begin with. Even if it was good, it will be better if you have a good editor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Hayley, how can people get in touch with you if they're, I mean, I'm sure I'm certainly incredibly fired up and inspired now. I can't wait to get stuck into my next book, but I'm sure people that are listening will probably feel the same and be really kind of raring to go. So if people wanted to speak to you, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, we have a couple of websites. One of them, our Onyx Publishing one, is undergoing an upgrade at the moment. That will be finished in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure when, you know, other versions of this will air, but I would say essentially people can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Sometimes my team handle, you know, inbox queries and things like that. But ultimately, I'm always on social media in some form, and our team is as well. So I would say that's the very best way to make contact with us to discuss, yeah, where you're at and what your goals are. But Facebook and LinkedIn are, you know, 100% good platforms for us.
Amazing. Well, Hayley, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been such a privilege to have you here. And, you know, I know that from all the comments that we've had tonight, you've inspired a lot of people, and they're probably all going to go to bed with their heads kind of full of dreams of getting the next book out. So thank you.
I hope so.
Very much. And,
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so lovely.
Yeah. And this was actually also your first podcast interview, wasn't it?
It was.
Who would have thought that, really? So very, very privileged to have had that role as well. So thank you very much, Hayley, and I'll see you soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Jane. Thank you.